Welcome to CNR Fishing Masterclass. You join us here today on the beautiful River Trent at Allrubus, where I'm going to take you through fishing the Dink Dink. Okay, so what is the Dink Dink and when would I use it? So the Dink Dink is a self-hooking rig and I'd use it on fast spiting species like roach, dace and perch. And the reason I'd use it is because it's a self-hooking method. So the rig itself, you've got your main line, which is a 6-pound Daiwa sensor, as I always use. And then running down, I've got 2 foot of 021. So I attach this the same way you would a shock leader. So you tie a loop in your main line and then a half blood knot to the main line. Running down, the first thing you need to do is put a swivel onto this piece of line. Then you run it onto a loop. I've done like a swivel boom onto this, just so there's no hole in it. So you put your swivel on, and then you want around 6 inch of the swiveled line down to your feeder bead, should I say. And then what you want to do is tie your hook direct to this line. So there is no hook length, it's a straight through rig onto 021. It might sound a bit crude, but because it's such a fast and self-hooking method, the fish aren't looking at the lines, they haven't got time to look at it. As soon as they come by this hook, it's direct and it's just hooking them. So you tie your hook directly onto the tag end of the line. So once you've tied your boom or your loop, you'll be left with a tag. Normally you'd cut that tag off and then you'd attach your hook length, but just tie your hook directly onto the tag end of the line. What you do want to do is make sure your hook isn't touching the feeder. So I've got a 6 inch from that knot there down to the feeder is 6 inch, and then off that you normally want a 4 or 5 inch hook length. And that way, when the feeder goes in, so it goes into the water, it's trailing behind your hook bait. As soon as the fish goes by that, it hooks itself straight away, and that is the Dink Dink. So next we'll go through our bait. Okay, so my side tray for fishing the Dink Dink could not be any simpler. So first off, we've just got some hemp, got about 2 points straight out the tin. Just normal hemp, and then we've got around 2.5 pints of maggots. So we've got 2 pints of bronze and half a pint of reds mixed in, and then 1.5 pints of casters. These was fresh this morning from Angler's Peg in Cannock, come straight off the red riddle, and you can still see there's a few maggots just turning. That's how fresh they are. Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, the bait's in them 3 tubs, so what's in the other one? So in this tub, all I've got is a few Camazan black cap feeders, so I can go through different ones on the day. You've got a 30 gram small one there, 20 gram small one, 50 gram big one. There's just a few different feeders in there. I've got a couple of packets of hooks, just in case I need to change my hook, and we've got the only hook I use on this method is a Camazan B520 in a 14 and a 16. Later on in the day, when it gets a bit better, I'll swap over to a 14 and we'll just hook the fish a bit better and the hook holds a bit better. The line I'm using, as that I attach to my main line, should I say, is just some strong Colmic X5000 line. And that's it. So let's get some fishing done. Okay, so swim selection. When I've come down today, I've looked at the river and a long run, and I can see shallow and gravel, but over the far side there's like a bend. So from experience, I know on the outside of a bend is going to be the deepest part of the river. That's where the food and the flow will congregate. So I've sat just off the bend, and what I'm going to do is clip up, just chuck it over to that tree, because I suspect there's going to be a hole of some kind there, and that's where the flow's going to be. The river's quite low, but a couple of days ago we had some floods, so the river's would have come right up, but it's run off. and I reckon that's where most of the food's going to congregate, and we'll hopefully catch some fish down there. So I'm going to clip the rod up now, just down by that tree, and have a look around just to see how deep it is. Okay, so what I've done, I've put a heavy feeder on. This is a 60 gram black cap feeder. All I'm going to do is going to cast it down towards the tree, just falling short so I can put my clip on. Okay, so what I've done there, I've cast down towards the tree and I've stopped it around 5 foot shorter of where I actually want to be. So what I'm going to do now is just take my bail arm off and take around 5 foot off the reel. What I'm going to do then is just put my clip on, reel back in, and then I'll cast to make sure my clip's where I want it to be. All I'm going to do now is just let the feeder, I've felt the feeder down, it feels around 6 to 7 foot deep, because I've got a count of about 4, but because of the flow your feeder's going to take longer on a river to get to the bottom. All I'm going to do now is let it hit the bottom, and I'm just going to watch my tip. If the feeder's too heavy, it'll just hit the bottom and just sit there. If it's too light, you'll see your tip bouncing as the feeder is moving down the river. So that's just sat there, that's 60 grams. So it's just sat there doing nothing now. What I'm going to do is reel in, put a lighter feeder on and give it another cast out. Okay, so having just chucked that feeder in, the perfect one for the job today is going to be a medium Camazon black cap in 30 grams. Because the river's not pulling too hard, I can get away with a light feeder. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start on a bigger one to put some bait in, and then I'll swap down to the smaller one then, and we'll stay on this for probably most of the day. Okay, what I'm going to do now is kick the peg off. So this part just requires a bit of thought and just using common sense really. So I'm just going to, I don't know what's in the peg or how the day's going to go. So I'm not going to go filling it in with maggots. What I'm going to do is just take a point bait tub and just put a handful of hemp in there and a handful of casters. Just mix them around, and for the first 20 minutes I'm going to just put a bed of hemp and casters down, and then just with a maggot on the hook. So with this big feed I just fill it up with hemp and casters and then a single maggot on the hook. I'm not putting any maggots in to start off with, just my hook bait. Just going to cast it in, hit the clip and then feel it down. When the feeder hits the bottom, just put the rod on the rest and just watch it. Had a bite straight away then. For the first 20 minutes or so I'm just gonna keep casting, but then once you've got a better bait down you can cast the rod in and leave it then, because it's a self-hooking method, the tip will just keep rattling. So again, cast the feeder in, hit the clip, feel it down. When it touches the bottom, place the rod on the rest and just watch the tip. Little rattle then. You only want to be leaving it in for 30 to 40 seconds for the first 20 minutes. Just build that bed of bait up, and then we can start introducing some maggots then, and the bites will come really quick. It's literally a case of just repeating yourself over and over again until you start start hooking fish, and then we can swap to that smaller feeder and just stick on that then and build the peg slowly. Considering it's feeder fishing, it's an extremely busy way of feeder fishing. Feeder fishing is normally associated with laziness and waiting for bites and stuff, but this method's probably the opposite. It's probably busier than waggler fishing. It's quite weird because it looks like you're fishing with tangles. When you've actually got a fish on, the fish is knocking against the feeder. Considering you're getting bites every chuck, the maggot, it's that positive. The maggot's like untouched. When they do actually give you a proper bite, they're hooked. They can't not hook themselves. It's that direct. Just feel the feeder down. As soon as it touches the bottom, put the feeder on the rest. Straight away they're onto that feeder. Although your maggot's not getting ragged, I still like to put a fresh maggot on now and again. And there we go, that's our first fish. That was after 4 casts or so. And as you'll see now, it looks quite weird. It looks like you've got a tangle. You see there, the fish is next to the feeder. It's absolutely mad. And if someone, say you're in a match for instance, and someone's on the next peg, and they don't know about the Dink Dink, then it's quite weird for them to look at. They look and think that you're fishing with a tangle. It's quite funny actually. I learnt this method off one of my team friends, one of my teammates in the army team. He lives in Germany, so he's always fishing on matches in Holland, Germany, and it was quite funny actually. He said he was fishing on a river out in Holland, and he was next to a Dutch guy, and the Dutch guy seen what he was doing, and he said, "You English, you're crazy. You fish with tangles." And it just cracked me up really. And when he showed me the method, I thought that's never going to work. And then I tried it, and it blew me away really. But yeah, it's that quick and tangle free. You just can't. I don't think you can beat it when it comes to dice and fast biting species like that. And that's another fish. Lovely. The second fish, it's a roach. It's got a bit of weed with him. So that's a dice and a beautiful little roach. Let's see if we can get another species. Okay, so we've been fishing around 15 minutes now. I'm getting a few decent fish. As you can see, that's a dice about 10 ounce, and it's unreal. What I'm going to start thinking about doing now is swapping to that smaller feeder, and then fill it half with hempen casters and half with maggots. So a little tip I can give you, when you're using hemp casters and maggots together, always fill up the maggots first, because hemp and the casters are a wet bait. If you keep dipping into your hemp and casters first, then going into your maggots, then it's going to wet your maggots, and your maggots will end up crawling out everywhere. So always go into your maggots first, and then into your hemp and casters. So your maggots are at the bottom, and they're going to be the first to come out. What I'll do this time, I'll just put the rod straight on the rest, and then wait for the tip to keep bouncing. That way you're just coming back with a fish more often. It's going to be on than not, kind of thing. So I had a bite then, soon as the feeder at the bottom. It's quite a vicious bite actually, and I'm not getting bites now, so I suspect that it's probably took my bait or smashed it. Just reel in and have a look, and there you go. I just had a feeling then, because with this method your tip does not stay still, so once you have that first bite, you're just leaving it in until it just keeps rattling. And if you don't have a bite then, your bait's gone 9 times out of 10. So again, single maggot on the hook. Go into your maggots first, half fill, hempen casters, job done. As easy as that. That way your maggots are always going to stay fresh throughout the day, they're not going to get wet and start crawling out. There you go, just waiting for the tip to just keep bouncing, and you're going to come back with a fish then, nearly every drop. Feels like another decent dice. There's a bit of weed down here, so I need to just keep the pressure on them and just keep pulling them through it. Another decent dice, this 5 ounce, 6 ounce this time. Maggots not touched. Literally, as soon as they go by it, they're hooking themselves. Okay, so the fishing has been really good so far, and what I'm going to do now is swap to a big hook, a size 14. The only downfall about fishing the Dink Dink is if you need to change something in the rig, you need to do the whole thing again. You can't just put a new hook length on and away you go. You need to do it. Luckily, it doesn't take long. So all we're going to do, You've got your loop in your main line, your £6 sensor. You can go direct to this £6 if you want, but all we're going to do is tie off a half blood knot to the loop of the main line. Slide the knot right up to the loop, pull nice and tight, trim that off so there's no tag end at all, trim it really tight, and then I do it so I've got like 3 foot of the 021, that way the knot isn't going to go through the top loop, because I always cast off around 3 to 4 foot. So what we're going to do then, place your snap link swivel onto the line, give yourself about 15 inch of line, So you've got 15" in your right hand, and then all we're going to do is do a swivel the line. Just keep swiveling, and you want around 6 inch, 6 to 8 inch, something like that. So we've got 6 inch of swiveled line. Put it through twice. Wet the knot, pull it nice and tight. And then we're left with our tag end. So this tag end you'd normally trim off, and then your hook length would attach. But with our tag end, we're going to tie our hook to that. Just get the hook that you want. Mine's going to be a 14 B520. Get my old school hook tire. And then we want this around 4 inch. So the way you're going to get your 4 inch hook length is the top pin here goes 4 inch away from the knot. And then you just tie your hook on, simple. Let's see if I don't tighten the hook up. There we go. You need a hook with quite a big spade because we're using strong line. You don't want the knot coming over the spade. Make sure you lubricate that. Pull it nice and tight. Get your scissors. And there we have our Dink Dink rig. I don't know how long that took, 3 minutes, something like that. In a match I would set, if I thought this was going to be my primary method, I'd set probably 3 or 4 of these up. So I haven't got to mess about changing stuff. But just while we've got the rig out, I'll talk you through the rod and the reel that I'm using for this setup. So in a lot of my videos you'll probably notice that I like my tournament rods because the river's quite down. It's not a very powerful river at the moment. I can get away with using small rods and light rods. So I've chosen the 11-foot tournament rod, and that is matched with a CS5 Cadence 4000 reel. So Cadence CS5 4000 reel. It's a bit of a mouthful. The reason I'm using this reel, it's nice and small. It's a 4000 version. It's got a nice big spool on it, but it's got loads of power. And believe it or not, these reels are £50. I've been using this now a few months, and it's absolutely staggering the amount of reel you get for your money. Yeah, and you want a nice powerful reel for cranking these dice in. We've got some weed and stuff on the inside, so you just need to keep the power on them and reel them through it like. That's why I'm using that. So 11-foot Daiwa tournament rod paired up with a Cadence CS5 4000 reel. Brilliant. Okay, I've just hooked a nice perch, and at the moment just trying to he's got me in the weed quite close to me. I'm just going to keep the pressure on him and just slowly keep pulling. we've got 021 line on, remember, so we've got nice decent gear on. So all I'm going to do is just, there we go, he's out of the weed now, just try and bring him round into the middle of the river. There we go. There we go. Nice perch. Just take your time. If you do hook a better fish, just take your time with them, keep the pressure on. As long as you've got that pressure on them, from your tip to their mouth, they can't do you. If you start loosening the pressure off and stuff like that, you're giving them something to work with. So just keep that pressure on, just slowly manoeuvre them to where you want. Sometimes the weed's that thick, there's just nothing you can do. This is why I love the B520 hook, because of the shape of it. These perch, it gets right under the bone, because it's not a wide gape hook. It's quite close, but it's really strong. So when they do take it, it goes right in the bones, and you very rarely lose perch with them. And that's why I use them hooks. Okay, so once you've built the swim up, and you can start experimenting, there's a bit of bait down there, so you can afford to, but you should be always thinking about how you can catch quicker. So one way you can do this is by threading a maggot on. Push the hook all the way into the maggot so just the point's exposed. So if a fish does take the bait, it's going to take the hook, if that makes sense. So let's try that then. I've just threaded a single red maggot on. And because you have got you've been casting for however long and the peg's built up, you can afford to have 2 bites at the cherry. So what I'll do, if I miss a fish, I'll just leave it in the peg. So we'll try that. So I missed that bite. All I'm going to do is just lower it back down and see if I can get another bite. If the fishing's really good, you can do this sometimes. Doesn't always work. I won't give it too long. There you go, so we had another bite then. So we had 2 bites at the cherry then. That maggot's still okay. So we'll try that again. If we miss a bite, just have another go. But it pays to not strike too hard, so you're not moving the feeder too much. So it's still actually in your peg. We up that one straight away. Looks like another one of them dice. Yeah, big dice. We'll try that again. We'll try and thread a maggot on. That seemed to work pretty well then. Another thing I will do, you'll probably realise I didn't put my feeder into the tubs then. So now the peg's built up, I'm going to try and nurture the peg and not put too much bait in. So I'll maybe put like, I don't know, 10 or 15 maggots in. And the same amount of hempen casters. So we're like half in the bait, so we're only half filling the feeder. And that way you're just keeping your peg ticking over. And you're not risking overfeeding the fish. So we missed a bite then. We only move the feeder probably a foot, 2 foot. We can lower it back down where them feeding fish are, and hopefully we'll get another bite. And it just saves reeling all that way back without a fish when you can just leave the feeder in the peg and hopefully come back with a fish most times. You're never going to come back with a fish every time. As I said we're not going to leave it in too long, and that's a fish. So out of 3 casts, we've come back with 2 fish. Oh, he's dropped off. Just my luck. That maggot's damaged that time. So we'll change the bait. Thread it right on again. Just put like 10 or 15 maggots in. Same amount of hempen casters. And just keeping the peg ticking over all the time. And that was on the drop then. Because we threaded that maggot on, it's took it on the drop and it couldn't get away from the hook. That was a roach this time. Maggot's still fine. That definitely is better, leaving that in the peg to try and get 2 bites, if that makes sense. We'll have one more go, then we'll try something else. Okay, so there is something else we can do after threading that maggot on. It seemed okay, to be fair. I was hooking a few more fish. But in your peg there's going to be all different kinds of fish. And what we want to try and do is every now and again just target them bigger fish. So what I'm going to do is just thread or just hook normally 3 red maggots. And I don't know why, I don't know whether it's the colour, but red maggots 9 times out of 10 will always select the bigger fish out your peg. And hooking 3 of them, then I think it's just going to be a bit more appealing to the bigger fish, maybe a chub or a big perch, something like that. So we'll try that. Might take a bit longer to get a bite, but when you do, hopefully it's going to be off a better fish. Straight away then we didn't get a bite as soon as the feeder touched the bottom, which with a single maggot you was getting a bite straight away. We are getting little bites and stuff, but no rattles really, just the odd pluck. We're just going to leave this in a bit longer because we've got them 3 maggots on. That was small fish, they've pinched a maggot off me. Let's put another one on. If the 3 maggots doesn't seem to do it, I'll just take one off, fish a double maggot, see what that does. And if that's no good, just go back down to a single maggot. You're always putting feed in the peg, so you're not going to ruin your peg by putting an extra maggot on, for instance. can tell straight away the bites are definitely slowed down since I put the 3 maggots on. Still getting bites. I'm going to leave it in a bit longer, but I'm still not going to leave it in for too long, maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time. That's enough time. If there's a bigger fish in your peg, that's enough time for them to get hold of it. So I'll have 1 more cast on this triple maggot, and then I'll change to a double maggot then. And I'll just keep changing until I find the best way to catch them bigger fish. If there's no bigger fish in your peg, or it seems there's none, then just go back down to a single maggot. But don't spend too long looking for them big fish. If they're there, you'll catch them. You haven't got to fish for them too long. Definitely a lot of smaller fish there. One more cast. 1 more cast. Three maggots again. We're still getting bites off them smaller fish. If I wasn't getting any bites, then I'd be a bit worried, but as long as you're getting them little plucks, you know that them smaller fish are still there. Feels like a decent fish. Feel massive. Might be a perch. Oh, done me. Done me. Yeah, so that was a better fish, but it still weren't massive. So I'm going to go to double maggot now. See if that's any good. Go double red again. Then I'll maybe try double bronze. It's all about just experimenting in your peg. Just don't do anything silly, and you'll be fine. It's amazing how you can get so many bites and your bait doesn't get smashed on this method. I don't know how. I don't know if they're plucking at the feeder or whatever, but you don't normally get them bites when you're not fishing this method. There we go. If you was fishing a conventional maggot feeder and you was getting rattles like this, your bait would be smashed every single time. Little chublet. See, and they're the fish that we wasn't catching on single maggot. So as soon as we put a double maggot on or a triple, you start catching chublets. And if there's smaller chub there might just be a bigger chub there. You don't know. Just keep plugging away. As long as I'm catching fish on double maggot, I'd stay on double maggot. Bite on the drop then. Say fish straight away on that double maggot. There's 2 fish in 2 drops. These reels are so good for the money. They're not tiny fish, and you can just keep winding with them. There's a big bite on the drop then. How was that not on? Whilst I'm catching on this double maggot, I'd just stay on it. And maybe occasionally every 15-20 minutes stick a triple on, see what happens. Oh, that's a nice little roach. What I'm going to do now, just put a double bronze on, see if that changes the species of fish or whatever. You'll know straight away if something's different. Like you could do something like, say for instance, just fill the feeder with maggots and you start catching roach. And it's like something's triggered something in your peg, but it's just because you've changed your feed. Just take your time, just keep reeling. Just trying to get into a rhythm. You can amass a crazy weight doing this because you don't realise just how quick you're catching. Because you get into a rhythm and it just gets really quick sometimes. Be nice if you could catch them great big dace one a chuck, I tell ya. The fish size seems very varied in the peg. Sometimes you just catch one stamp of fish all day. But today I've caught fish of all different sizes. I don't get how they're not on. I really don't get. The tip just slams straight over, like they're hooked. So when you pick up, it's not on. Strange. Still only feeding half a feeder full. Sometimes you can starve them onto the hook by not feeding as much. So if you're putting less in theory you're going to get bites quicker. There we go. dice. Seems like there's a lot of dice there. Not so many roach. We have caught a few, but not too many. Double bronze. Oh. The tip absolutely slammed down then. Okay, so it's getting to the latter part of the session now. And what I've done, I've just shortened the hook length down. And I've put a single caster on. The reason I've done that is because over the last half an hour, 40 minutes, I've started catching a few roach. So by putting a caster on, I think if there's any nice roach there, we might catch them. So just see how it goes. It's my first go down with a caster on. I've hooked a fish. And it's a dice. Still a nice dice by all accounts. Just threading a caster right onto the hook. The only downfall with a caster is you can't sit there and wait for the fish to hang themselves. You're going to have to strike at the bites. Another thing I am doing, I've cut the maggots right out. So I'm just feeding hempen casters now. There's bites on the drop there. Just hook that fish on the drop. Might be a chublet or something like that. It's a smaller fish. Another dice. Must be a lot of dice there. But that's 2 fish in 2 drops, so that's a good sign. Yeah, because I have been feeding casters throughout the day, it's worth always putting one on and trying it. There we go. It just seems like the hook in the cell's much better, as if it can keep them on the hook. Problem with them dice, as soon as you hook them they start spinning, and they are a nightmare for coming off. I'm going to carry on for another 20 minutes and then I'll see you at the end. Another fish on the caster. Nice dice. Right, I think that's a lovely way to end the session. So let's put this rod away and we'll have a look at what we've got.